Hello biologists, welcome to the quiz 2.14 and 2.16 review. We're going to talk about carbohydrates and lipids. This is for biology at MNVA. What you need to know by the end of today's lesson is the difference between a simple and a complex carbohydrate. You need to know how plants and animals store energy in the form of complex carbohydrates and the differences between plants and animals, the elements that make up simple and complex carbohydrates, and what lipids are and why they are important. How do we distinguish carbohydrates from other molecules? Well, carbohydrates contain only three elements: carbon, hydrogen, and oxygen. Remember that, CHO, carbon, hydrogen, and oxygen. Notice the carbon, the black atoms here in this glucose molecule, which is a simple sugar. So the carbon is black, the oxygen is red, and the hydrogen is white. So carbon, hydrogen, and oxygen. They're in a specific ratio of 1 to 1. The carbon, hydrogen, and oxygen are in a ratio of 1 carbon to 2 hydrogen to 1 oxygen. That's how we know it's a carbohydrate. It's got three elements and they're in the relationship 1 to 1. If you forget which elements are in carbohydrates, there's a way to remember. Carb in carbohydrates is for carbon, the O is for oxygen, and the hyd is for hydrogen. Foods that contain carbohydrates includes breads, pastas, grain, rice, potatoes, crackers, breakfast cereal. Remember in Lab 2.08 we found carbohydrates in the form of starch. Starch is just one kind of carbohydrate in the water we cooked pasta in and in the water we cooked potatoes in. So we know that there's definitely carbohydrates in the form of starch in pasta and potatoes. There are different kinds of carbohydrates. And the simplest one, we saw glucose earlier, that's an example of a monosaccharide. And monosaccharide sounds like a complicated word, but it doesn't need to be. Mono simply means one. Like if I speak in a monotone voice, I'm only using one tone. Or monotony is doing just one thing. And saccharide, like saccharin, means sugar. So a monosaccharide means one sugar. That's the simplest form of a carbohydrate, is a monosaccharide. Here's glucose again. It's a monosaccharide. It just has one ring. You can see that the carbon and one oxygen are in a ring here. There are also disaccharides. They have two rings. Di means two. It rhymes with bi, like bicycle has two wheels. So that's easy to remember. And saccharin means sugar. So a disaccharide is just two sugar rings. Here's a familiar disaccharide that you probably eat every day. Here's sucrose. Sucrose is just the white table sugar that you is probably in your cupboard and is probably in your breakfast cereal and a lot of other things that you eat. So sucrose is a disaccharide. It has two rings here. Polysaccharides are another kind of carbohydrate. Poly means many, like a polygon has many sides. A polysaccharide has many sugars. It's many sugars stuck together, bonded together. Starch is an example of a complex carbohydrate or polysaccharide. Glycogen and cellulose are also examples of polysaccharides, many sugars put together in a complex molecule or a complex carbohydrate. Here's an example of starch. Starch is how plants store extra glucose. Each one of these units here is a glucose molecule. All starch is a bunch of glucose molecules stuck together, and it has branched chains. There might be another chain here and another one here and another one here. It's how plants store extra glucose. They stick them all together and it makes a starch molecule. Here's a close-up view of starch. You can see each of these is a glucose molecule. All the plant has done is stunk a bunch of glucoses together to store that energy long term. Is starch a polysaccharide or a monosaccharide? Let's remember that poly means many. Are there many glucoses stuck together? Yeah, there's lots of glucoses stuck together. So starch is a polysaccharide or a complex carbohydrate. Glycogen is how animals store their extra glucose in big molecules for long-term storage. There's a core protein inside the glycogen molecule. It's surrounded by branches of glucose. And the whole globular granule may contain 30,000 units of glucose. That's 30,000 little glucoses stuck together. Here's a picture of glycogen. Lots of little branches. Each one of these little tiny things here is a glucose molecule, and you can see how many branches there are. And that makes it easier for the body to start breaking down glycogen. Enzymes can start working on any of these branches, breaking off a few glucose molecules when the body needs to increase the blood sugar. So when you're feeling a little low, your body starts breaking down your stored sugar in the form of glycogen and releasing some glucose into your bloodstream so you can have some energy. Cellulose is another polysaccharide or complex carbohydrate. It's many glucoses stuck together. It's like starch, but its properties are much different. It's bonded in a different way. It's lots of glucoses stuck together, but it's bonded in a different way. Cellulose has a structure that makes it hard to dissolve in water, but that's good if you're a tree and you want to stand up. Cellulose is the main ingredient in wood. It helps plants hold their shape. If you've ever crunched a piece of celery, you're crunching cellulose molecules. They're stiff and they help plants hold their shape. Cellulose is many simple carbohydrates linked together. You can see the simple carbohydrate glucose in here, and all it is stuck together with a whole bunch of other glucoses. All right, let's switch gears here for a minute and talk about lipids. This is quiz 2.16. What are they? Well, an easy way to remember what lipids are is they're in your lip balm. They're fats, oils, and waxes. You don't put pasta and potatoes on your lips. You put things that are slippery, oily, kind of greasy. They're fats, oils, and waxes, and whether you use chapstick or Carmex or whatever your favorite brand of lip stuff is, it probably has fats, oils, and waxes in it. Lipids have several purposes in biology. For us who live in northern climates, they're great insulation. They're also long-term energy storage for plants, for animals and plants. In the human body, they serve as steroid hormones, which are chemical messengers between cells. As a teenager, you're probably familiar with hormones, and those hormones are made out of lipids. The phospholipid bilayer is also made out of lipids. The phospholipid bilayer is what the cell membrane, the outside covering of cells, are made out of. The phospholipid bilayer is made out of a polar molecule, a phospholipid. This part is hydrophilic. It likes water, so it faces out towards the water on the outside of the cell and the inside of the cell. This part of the molecule, this is a molecule and there are a bunch of them together in the phospholipid bilayer. This part is hydrophobic. It doesn't like water. So all the tails of this polar molecule face in, away from the water, and it serves like a plastic bag around the cell. It keeps water out and it keeps water in. It helps the cell maintain an aqueous environment. And if you can't remember what aqueous means, where does Aquaman swim? An aqueous environment would be full of water. So the cell membrane, which is made out of phospholipids, Here's a phospholipid. It's a polar molecule, helps the cell maintain an aqueous environment. Thanks for coming. I'm thinking your brain is full now and you can run away and take quiz 2.14 and 2.16. If you need more help, you can talk to your teacher. Thanks so much. Bye-bye.